'Cause butter makes it better. Clearly Bruno made this challenge because there's butter.
Your butter could use a bit more fat, meaning butter. Butter.
It's a lot of butter.
It's good though.
Who doesn't like butter? Butter's my favorite food, so.
It's true, everything's
butter.
better with butter, and everything's better with Bruno. And Linda, you and I have talked about this throughout the pandemic. We found our shows that brought us calm and brought us sort of a little bit of zen. I was shocked to hear that you were a Great Canadian Baking Show viewer.
Because I barely know how to turn my oven on, and I am not kidding. So why do I love this show? Well, why do I love the man we're about to introduce to you? Bruno Feldeisen is a pastry chef. He is a judge on the Great Canadian Baking Show.
Better than butter.
He has, you were the former executive pastry chef at the Four Seasons in Vancouver.
For 4 years.
Wow.
With Ned Bell and the team there.
Yeah, Ned Bell, many chefs, many talented chefs. Great crew.
Yeah.
Amazing place.
We were saying, what? I didn't even know you live in Vancouver. Everybody assumes you live in Toronto or something.
Yeah, Toronto. Yeah, Vancouver has been my home for 14 years now.
But your neighbor didn't believe you.
No, when I just moved outside of Vancouver to a new building, and I bump into a neighbor who look at me and say, "Dude, you look like the guy on a baking show." And I'm saying, "It's me." And the guy didn't believe me. So, yeah, good try. But you do sound and look like him,
Wow.
It's
To
him.
Jody's point, I am someone, I don't bake, I don't even cook really, and it does seem kind of bizarre that I have found this show. But I found it during the pandemic when I was suffering from anxiety and I was stressed out. And I found it was like a hug. It just
Love
sort
it.
of chilled me out, and it was just calm and people seemed friendly. What do you think the success is?
I think it's having people who are authentic on the show, who are very generous with their talent and time. I mean, it's a huge time commitment for the baker to be on the show.
How long is the taping?
If you make it to the final, we're talking weeks.
Wow.
7 weeks, 6, 7 weeks. So just for that, I think it shows how generous people can be. And then after, it's the talent and, the talent.
The judges?
The judge, no, the show is not about us. People forget, and I think to be a good judge on a show, on any show, it's not about me. It's about the bakers. And that's a key, I think people can, when they see the show, they realize it.
Yeah.
Me, I'm just part of the equation. I'm bringing solutions. And
challenges, my goodness. I mean, there's
know.
so many questions. Unlike Linda, we joke all the time because I went to culinary school before getting into broadcast, and my partner is a chef. And then we've got the one that does not turn
The one
on
who
her
goes out
oven.
for dinner a lot.
So there's a little something for everyone in the Great Canadian Baking Show, which is wonderful. And that it's not a popularity contest.
It's not. It's about giving.
Yeah.
I do cooking and baking. Cooking is really at the core. Cooking is about survival. You go hunt, fish, harvest to feed yourself and the family and the community to some extent. Baking is different. Baking is about gifting, celebrating, giving away something in the office. So the approach is way different, and there is a larger sense of, pleasure to it.
It is all rooted in pleasure, isn't it? And it's a lot harder than it looks because I am a horrible baker. I think I did, for my final exam at Pierre de Broglie, I did 16 sponge cakes and no two were alike. It's chemistry, man. It's hard.
It's chemistry,
When
consistency.
Lauren was the winner of not the current season, but last season,
Season 6,
from Tawasin, this young woman, I mean, we were just like, yes, so it makes you feel good following along with the...
Yeah, because it's to be a good baker, it's not always about recipes or about having 20 years or 30 years of experience. I think it's the ability to understand the task, to be very flexible, and to be very creative and resourceful. I think it's very important.
It's interesting when I watch you on TV, I think, here's this very elegant, dignified, accomplished man.
Who, me?
Yeah,
You're a
you.
gentleman.
And while this guy has no cares in the world, he's on top of the world, he's a big success. And then I read your story, and it turns out that you have really had a lot of challenges, especially in your childhood, that you had to endure. Can you tell us the story?
Yeah, the funny part, the interesting part, I thought that was normal because that's all you know. Right. So I grew up with a lot of challenges, in a time where social support was almost non-existent, where nobody spoke about therapy. So I'm like, it's tough, but that's the only life I knew.
Tell us
So-
about your challenges. So for our viewers who are like,
So-
I only know Bruno as this amazing
Yeah,
baker.
so, you know, I grew up with my mom who had their own trauma in life, who ended up dying from an overdose on the street at 36 years old. I grew up in foster care, never met my dad. I met him once for 10 minutes. And then it's, you know, but I'm like, again, because that's the only life you know, you're like, okay, it's fine, you know. So you develop a sense of survival. You know, I think the luck I had, I never touched drugs because I've seen the damage to my own mom. So I never did drugs because of that. So it kind of saved me from a lot of trouble. I've seen friends who grew up with me in foster care system who died from, you know, overdose, from suicide. I think for me, it came back to me very hard where, you know, I was in New York, top of my game, mid-30s, where anxiety came back to me with a vengeance. You know, I started to have panic attack and I couldn't do it. I dropped out from top of my career, making a lot of money, having a great life in New York, to becoming bankrupt, couldn't hold a job, lost everything. So, you know, so at one point you have to decide, you know, I need to look for help, you know. Doing self-therapy does not work.
Right.
It helps, but does not resolve the issue.
So what was the catalyst that helped you?
I think
what
when
was
I
your
became a
first domino?
father, I mean,
Yeah.
I became a father late in life. I mean, late in life, let me rephrase it, in my early 40s.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, I cannot live trapped in that mindset. You know, I was a survivor for sure. I knew that. I knew how to come out from trauma on my own. But, you know, I wanted to become a warrior, and I think my son helped me to understand the difference where, you know, yeah, the past define who I am, but does not need to dictate where I'm going to go.
Oh, that's
And that's the
an important
difference
statement,
too.
Bruno.
We live in one of the most beautiful parts of the world.
Yeah.
And yet we also see the poverty, we see people struggling with mental health, we see the addiction. What do you think when you see
So I
that?
never, sometimes, so often we see on the news, Vancouver rated the best city in the world, and you know, it's all over front page, and that makes me so angry because we are not the best city in the world. You know, just take a walk in the, you know, east side. It's mind-blowing that we treat homeless as criminal. Housing is a big issue. Access to food is a bigger issue than ever.
Yeah.
And people making six-figure struggle. You
Which
know.
is crazy.
It's crazy. So, yeah, I can relate, I can feel the pain. I think as a society, as a country, we can do way better. You know, we are in no position to critique other places, other countries,
Right.
because on our own backyard, it's not pretty. It's
So
very
why are
sad.
we frozen here? It seems like the conversation Linda and I have been talking about for years and years, long before this show, we've been talking about on radio, the shortcomings of our city and the greater Metro Vancouver and even across the province when it comes to homelessness and affordability and housing crisis and such. Is there a, like, one domino that everybody's neglecting to push over? Is everybody afraid to do one thing?
I think all politicians from across the spectrum of ideas don't know what to do. They are frozen themselves. They are fearful of doing anything wrong. I mean, drug is a major issue. You know, I mean, my son when he was 2 years ago, so he was 15, his best friend died from a drug overdose.
Oh, no.
So for me, I was like mind-blowing that kids that age have access to drugs. 3 years ago, or before COVID, I was doing a fundraising for Coast Mental Health, spoke to the chief of police in Vancouver, Mr. Chu, who told me during our conversation, you know, any given time in Vancouver, there is about 400 kids living on the street. And I have to ask the question twice because I think maybe I didn't understood properly, you know.
Yeah.
And living on
Kids.
the street's a vague definition, but, you know, it shows you the scale of the issue, you know. And so it's housing, it's access to food, it's income. You don't even know where to start, you know. I think there is a lack of political will to fix it. You know, mental health is a big issue in Canada. If you want to go through therapy, it's extremely expensive. You know, it's
It's oppressively expensive.
$260 an hour
An
for
hour.
Yeah,
Which
and-
makes me think, in a way, that I feel like we need almost like a pandemic type response,
Yeah.
where the government pushed in hundreds of billions of dollars.
Exactly.
And I think we need to do that at that scale
Yeah.
to crack down and figure out the housing situation, to make sure there's treatment on demand.
There is extreme solutions, you know. There is possibility to make it better, but I think there is a lack of will to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there is, always it's somebody else's issue, somebody else's problem. But
political football.
Yeah, but
People.
at the end of the day, it's my problem, it's your problem, it's the viewer's problem, because it affects everybody. It affects school, safety, security. I mean, you see people on the street begging for food in Vancouver.
Yeah.
I'm like, how is that possible?
It's
How is it?
embarrassing to me.
It's more expensive to keep people out unhoused
Yeah.
than it would be to
Yeah.
actually pay people.
Per square feet
Yeah.
in Vancouver, it's more expensive to rent a single occupancy room per square feet. It's more expensive than some of the high-end condos. So
Wow.
people on the street are being abused from the top, from the bottom. Once you're into that situation, I don't even know, you have to be a superhero to come out from that.
Well, and that's, I've talked to Dr. Gabor Mate, who's kind of a specialist in addictions, and said at the root of it, almost in every case, there's trauma.
Yeah.
And that's your scenario?
I was. My mom tried to kill me when I was 12 years old. So
Your
I
mom
have,
tried to kill you.
Yeah, so,
How
you know.
so? How?
she didn't believe in anything and forced me to swallow pills, Valiums, So I ended up in hospital, getting stomach cleaning.
Pumped,
Yeah, but nobody stepped in to say maybe something is wrong here.
They didn't?
No, because in the 70s,
Right.
again, everybody washed their hands.
It was an accident. Something
Yeah.
you probably got into
Yeah,
the medicine
and
cabinet.
to come out from that trauma, it takes strength. I don't have the fact for me even to be on the show. It takes more time and more energy to do it. Am I suffering? I don't think I'm suffering. I'm quite happy. I have a great life. But a lot of things, a lot of situations create stress for me, which takes me more energy and time to manage. So I can imagine if you have trauma and you don't take care of it.
Right.
You end up on the street very easily in Canada. You don't need to.
Every time you talk about it, though, you're helping someone.
Yeah.
Because someone watching right now sees themselves
Yeah,
in you and
but-
says, Bruno actually pulled himself out of all of that trauma.
Yeah, but I don't want to make it like it's easy.
No,
No.
not easy.
I'm very fortunate. I'm very, I don't know. Sometimes people ask me, how do you do it? I don't know. I'm not somebody very religious. Maybe somebody was looking after me. But I think early on I developed a sense of survival, and on the back of my mind, every day I think like, I can easily fall into that crack,
Yeah.
losing a job, losing housing. People get evicted, renovation in Vancouver, and if you don't have family, friends, support, resource, you can end up on the street very easily.
Very easily.
Okay, listen, this is an important conversation. It's a heavy conversation. We have to lighten it up before you
We
go.
do.
Okay.
You brought us some, what did you bring
Treats.
here?
The
This
chocolate chip cookie, I didn't make them. I was
Okay.
walking on down the street and I smelled that aroma of
Thank
chocolate
you.
chip cookie. I'm like, I need
Now,
to grab
we have a
those.
local baker who brought something in for you to try because
Okay.
you're the judge. This is, do you have the list of what that is?
It is a
Jody?
hazelnut.
Looks very
Where did I
nice.
find it? Hold
And
on.
who's that baker?
Oh, we'll
I'm going to
tell
tell you
after.
as soon as you try it. It is a
Oh, it's
chocolate hazelnut mousse cake. Here we go.
So
Yeah,
we'll
it
watch
looks-
you judge this.
It's very classic.
Very classic.
It's very good.
Do you want to tell who the baker is?
The baker is Erin Ireland.
It's vegan.
It is vegan,
So
and
it's
she is
amazing.
from To Live For. Could you tell it was vegan?
Be honest. You can be honest.
Well, when you say Erin, right away I knew that's somebody who knows how to be a good baker, a good vegan baker, because I tried her stuff before.
Right.
And anything vegan is so difficult to create perfect flavors.
Because you can't put the butter and...
You can't. So I cook vegan sometimes, and I know the challenge to create flavors. Butter is perfect.
Yeah.
Butter emphasizes a combination of flavor like no other fat. You can do it with olive oil, but butter really is a perfect fat for
I
that.
agree. Butter is
So
the thing.
when you do something with no butter, you lose a lot of platform to create flavors, to stabilize flavors. It's amazing. You could,
You know what's interesting
Erin,
is
thank
we
you, thank you,
told
thank you,
Erin that I'm like, Bruno's gonna know to Live For Bakery, and Bruno's gonna know Erin Ireland, and she's like, no, I don't think so. Yeah.
yeah,
he
no,
did.
I knew
He
her.
did.
She's an amazing baker.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe on the chocolate mousse, I could feel like there is no
Oil.
fat,
no
fat,
fat,
dairy.
no cream.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
delicious.
but the sponge is great.
She's brought you a whole box of things so that you'll be going with a cinnamon bun and a salted caramel
God,
cruffin
I know.
and a
I'm
coconut
embarrassed now.
lemon
I didn't
roll
bring anything
and a
for
Nanaimo
her.
bar and a sausage roll.
Yeah, vegan sausage roll.
She
you
has
go.
a bakery now.
She does.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
live for
Yeah,
bakery.
I remember I had tried her lemon pound cake.
Isn't that the best?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's in the box too. I
The
think.
lemon poppy seed pound cake with a little bit of coconut.
It's-
Anyway, okay, we got to go. We're
Yeah,
running out of time.
Very good, very kudos, because I know how difficult it is to make a good vegan dessert or any vegan food. It's very difficult.
I'm going to eat
Chef
the Dirty
Bruno.
Apron chocolate
And
cookie
if you
while...
want,
Okay.
if you want great vegan food in Vancouver, Do Chai
Yes.
on Main Street, amazing food.
Okay, they used to be in
We're going to have
Yaletown.
Bruno come back now that we know he
Yeah,
lives here.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Bruno.
Thank you for having
Chef
me.
Bruno,
Thank you for
Bruno
the cake,
Feldeisen.
Erin. Thank you. Very
Thank
good.
you so
Yeah.
much.
Take care.
I love
We
this.
have lots of cookies to eat here too. Okay, coming up next on Seal and Vance. If you hate fraud artists, I think the answer is we all do. You can become a BC whistleblower now, and you can earn up to $250,000. We're going to tell you how to do that.
You
coming
got to
up.
stay tuned for this. That's an important story. Also, we got to talk about our viewing party this week. Oh, hello, Elaine.
Elaine is 94. Thank you for watching, Elaine.
That's Heather and Louie.
We also have Jeff and Lou from Lanceville.
And Judy and Andrew from Victoria. Thanks everybody for watching. Get involved with our viewing party by taking a picture of you watching us right now and set it to viewingparty@chekmedia.ca.